Hey, everyone. We've got a lot to cover today because multiple major storms are on the way for the United States over the next couple of weeks. Snow is making a big return to places like the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. And we could even be looking at a full-fledged winter storm as we move into the middle of this week. But that's not all. There's a massive storm system brewing on the West Coast that could bring up to 150 inches of snow to the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada. That is just an insane amount of snowfall. So in today's forecast, I'm going to break down everything you need to know about these upcoming winter storms and how they're going to impact different parts of the country. Now, let's start with what's happening right now. We've got a ton of moisture moving across the East Coast, and that has already brought snow to parts of southern and central New England, along with some heavy rainfall. The good news is that this system is moving offshore, so things will start to clear out later today. But don't get too comfortable because there's already another snow event setting up. Thanks to an Alberta clipper that's moving through the Midwest and will eventually track into the Northeast by Monday. Alberta clippers typically bring light to moderate snowfall, so we're not expecting a massive accumulation with this system, but it's still something to keep an eye on, especially for areas that have already been dealing with back-to-back winter weather events. Now let's shift over to the West Coast because this is where things are really ramping up. What we're looking at here is an atmospheric river, and not just any atmospheric river. This is a Category 4 event, which means it's bringing a huge amount of moisture into the region. This system is absolutely dumping rain and snow across California, and it's also creating some serious flooding concerns. But what makes this even more interesting is that a piece of energy from this atmospheric river is eventually going to break off and move east, setting the stage for a potential winter storm in the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. And let's talk about snowfall totals because these numbers are just crazy. The higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada could see up to 150 inches of snow. That's over 12 feet of snow in just a matter of days. And even outside of the mountains, we're looking at several inches of rain across parts of California, with flooding and mudslides becoming a real concern. Northern California in particular is going to get hammered over the next few days before the system finally starts to wind down around Wednesday or Thursday. As we move into February, things are going to get even more interesting. We're expecting several more winter storms over the next couple of weeks, and we could even see an Arctic blast or two. But exactly where those will hit is still a little up in the air. The overall weather pattern is shifting, and what we're seeing is a very active jet stream setup. Right now, the polar jet stream is positioned far to the north, which is allowing warm air to spread across the southern United States. And I'm talking really warm. Parts of Texas are seeing temperatures in the 80s right now, which is just wild for February. And that warmth is going to stick around for at least the next week or so. But what does this all mean for winter storms? Well, despite the warm air in the south, we do have a couple of disturbances that are going to move along the Canadian-U.S. border, and those are going to be the systems to watch. These troughs will likely bring snow, ice, and even severe weather to parts of the country, and the main areas at risk will be the central and northern plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. Now, that doesn't mean we won't see any winter weather further south, but these are the regions that look to have the highest probability of seeing significant snowfall and ice accumulations over the next couple of weeks. So let's take a look at what's happening this week. Right now, we've got a ton of snow and rain falling across the Pacific Northwest and along the West Coast, with several inches of rain and multiple feet of snow expected in the mountains. Meanwhile, back in the Midwest, we've got an Alberta clipper moving through, and that's going to bring some light to moderate snowfall to Michigan and eventually the Northeast. Most areas will only see a few inches, so it's not a major snowstorm, but it's still something to keep an eye on. Now, as we move into Tuesday and Wednesday, things start to get really interesting. That's when a piece of this atmospheric river is expected to break off and move across the northern plains, the Midwest, and eventually into the Ohio Valley and Northeast. This could develop into a much bigger storm system. But here's where things get tricky. The weather models aren't exactly agreeing on how big this storm is going to be. The GFS model, which is what we're looking at here, isn't showing a huge system by Wednesday night. But the European model is painting a very different picture. According to the Euro model, this storm is going to form much faster and be significantly larger, bringing widespread snow, ice, and even the potential for severe weather. Because of these differences, we don't have a solid answer yet on how much snow or ice this storm is going to bring. But there is a chance for severe weather, which is not something we typically see in February. In fact, we could see severe storms as far north as Indiana by Wednesday, which is extremely rare for this time of year. Then by Thursday, this system moves into the Northeast. And at that point, I think there's a very high chance that we're looking at a full-fledged winter storm for parts of the region. And if the GFS model is right, this won't be the last storm. There's already another potential system lining up for February 9th or 10th. And then beyond that, the models are even hinting at an even bigger winter storm around February 12th. Now, of course, forecasting that far out is tricky, so we'll have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's definitely something to watch. The bottom line here is that we know a storm is coming, but we're still working out the details on snowfall amounts, ice potential, and severe weather threats. The atmospheric river on the West Coast isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So we're going to keep seeing storm after storm hitting California, Oregon, and Washington over the next couple of weeks. By Tuesday, the weather doesn't change dramatically. We might see the beginnings of a western trough developing, but overall, it looks like the jet stream will remain mostly zonal. This will bring precipitation to the central and western U.S., especially along low pressure areas. Snow will be possible to the north of the jet stream, but areas like the mountains will continue to see consistent snowfall. Wednesday, February 5th, will bring more snow to the northern plains and mountains. And as a low pressure system moves over Nebraska, some rain or ice could form along the warm front with snow further north. There's also the possibility of thunderstorms beneath the warm front, which is typical when a cold front follows behind. By Thursday, February 6th, we'll experience a warm up across the eastern U.S. as a warm front moves in from the north. This will pull warm, humid air up the East Coast, and this could lead to thunderstorms along the cold front that follows the warm front. It's a classic situation where the lifting of warm, moist air leads to instability, which could trigger storms. After this, there might be a brief period of cooler temperatures, but the transition isn't expected to bring a deep Arctic blast just yet. We'll see some isolated showers and thunderstorms in the Gulf Coast and other southern areas, but the overall pattern will be more typical of February with cooler conditions expected in the west as the system moves through. By Friday, February 7th, the east will start to cool off a bit more, but the west will still experience snow and cold. This pattern indicates a negative PNA, which usually makes significant cold outbreaks harder to come by. Despite this, the east will still feel some chill after front moves through. The south, however, will likely remain warmer and more humid with some scattered thunderstorms popping up. Heading into the weekend, February 8th and 9th, there's a weak low expected to bring some snow to the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, with rain and snow possible in the southern and eastern regions as the next system develops. As this low moves through, we'll see another round of warm and humid air getting pulled up the East Coast, bringing more rain, snow, and possible thunderstorms. As we look ahead to Sunday, February 10th, it's clear that the East Coast will be in the line of fire for another round of weather, with a warm front pushing in from the south and a cold front behind it. This could bring another round of snow and ice to the Northeast and Middle Atlantic regions. The warm, moist air ahead of the front could trigger more storms and rainfall, while snow and ice could accumulate further north. The general theme here is the alternating warm and cold air moving back and forth, leading to complex weather patterns and potential winter storms. This pattern will likely continue until the middle of the month as we see more storm systems developing and moving eastward. By Tuesday, February 11th, a storm system is expected to form in the central USA, bringing heavy snow to the Rockies, Plains, and Midwest, while thunderstorms could develop in areas like Texas and Oklahoma. The storm will bring cold and snow to the northern regions, but also lead to warm and humid conditions further south, fueling more severe weather. As the system progresses, it will bring widespread snowfall to the Northeast, especially to the interior mountainous areas. The significant snow will spread to areas like New York, Pennsylvania, and the Mid-Atlantic, while the Southeast could experience more thunderstorms. Looking ahead by Wednesday, February 12th, there's the possibility of a major snowstorm in the Northeast as another low-pressure system moves along the coast. This could lead to significant snowfall for the region, with wintry weather stretching from the Mid-Atlantic up into New England. By the end of the week, the pattern will likely continue with another wave of snowstorms moving through the northern U.S. on Friday, February 14th. The East Coast could experience more snowfall, and the West will continue to see storms and heavy snow, particularly in the mountain regions. In terms of longer-term trends, the models are suggesting a deeper and more widespread Arctic air mass moving into the eastern U.S. by mid-February. This could bring a more intense cold snap reminiscent of the cold weather seen in January. However, this is still far out, and we'll need to continue monitoring the models to see if this pattern holds. The overall trend seems to be colder and snowier conditions for the northeastern U.S. and the Midwest, especially after February 13th, with a potential for major snowstorms across the region. By mid-February, models suggest a potential shift where a positive PNA could lead to more sustained cold and snow in the east, while the West could see a warming trend. This might lead to an even colder stretch for the eastern U.S., particularly around February 13th to 15th, with Arctic air pushing southward. These shifts in temperature and storm patterns will likely be driven by the interaction between the polar vortex and developing low-pressure systems. If this cold spell pans out, it could lead to significant disruptions, especially with heavy snow and ice for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. To summarize, the overall pattern for the first half of February looks to be a back and forth between warm and cold conditions, with notable snowfall across northern regions. The models are showing some disagreement, but it's clear that the East Coast and Midwest will continue to experience stormy weather, with colder air pushing in as we head into the second half of the month. It's going to be an interesting stretch of weather to watch as these systems evolve and move across the country. Keep an eye on the updates and watch the trends closely for more details.